Hey guys, Stuart Charles here, HomeStudioBasics.com, helping you make sound decisions. So today we're going to get into the Audio-Technica ATH M40X versus the Status Audio CB1. Wow, that was a mouthful. So first up, build. Both of these come with a straight and coiled cable. Both are detachable, but the CB1's cable is a little bit harder to detach. I found myself really, and this has been ongoing for a while now, you kind of have to like pull and tug towards where the jack meets the thin part of the wire, and I really don't like that I have to do that. But the M40X's is much easier to, they made it really intuitive. There's like two little white lines that line up from the jack going into the ear cup. I don't know why Status Audio made the CB1 so difficult to insert the wire, but it is. When you insert the wire into the ear cup on the M40X, you don't quite line up the two white lines, but make sure they're like a little bit off center, and then you twist and you'll hear it. It doesn't make like a click, but it makes a faint noise that you can hear that it's in. With the CB1, you also turn it, but it's much harder to pull at the base. So the M40X overall, as far as size, is more compact. The CB1's a lot bulkier. Both of these headphones fold and rotate in pretty much the exact same way, which I thought was interesting. Both of the cups on these rotate inwards, and then they come back 90 degrees. They don't rotate back outward 90 degrees, so they stop right at the neutral position. So a lot of people have issues with the hinge cracking because of that. Whereas with the 50X, they did rotate all the way back around. The 40X is a little bit more conducive for portable use, I guess. The CB1 is just, it's wider. You kind of look like E.T. with this headphone on. Both collapse in on themselves in the exact same way too. The CB1 is sort of more of a knockoff of the 50X, which is really interesting to me. Of course, it's all plastic, while the 40X has some hints of metal like in the headband, and we'll talk about that in a second. As far as weight is concerned, the 40X comes in at 8.4 ounces or 247 grams without any cables attached. The CB1 comes in at 8.9 ounces and 263 grams. The CB1 does not have a case. The 40X does come with a case, and the 40X's case is really, it's plush. I really like it a lot. So the headband adjustments, the 40X adjustment, it's a metal headband, it's a metal adjustment, and it only shows lines for the adjustments. And the CB1, by contrast, has a plastic headband adjustment, and they are numbered. But you can't really see the numbers unless you look really closely, which you will be doing. It's a little more loosey-goosey when you're trying to adjust it. It doesn't really click at any one particular spot like the 40X does. So I would say the 40X's adjustments are a little bit easier and more reliable. Like they probably won't move around too much. As far as the ear cups, the CB1's ear cups are a nice protein leather. They're thicker, whereas with the 40X, the cups are a lot shallower and they're more oval shaped versus the rounder circular shape of the CB1. CB1s fit better on my head. I would consider the 40X a cross between circumaural and supraaural. So they're kind of like a V6 or a 7506, but a little bit more enveloping of your ears than those two. They're not gonna completely engulf your ear. Ideally, I guess it's a weird fit, and you'll notice them after a while. The protein leather of the CB1, I find, is just a lot more reliable over the long term. Like these are probably not going to peel or crack at all. Whereas with the 40X, I have not had any issues with the 40X because I don't use them every single day. But when I had the M50, both used the same padding. It cracked over time and hardened, basically, and it was really a hassle. But fortunately, I mean, you can replace the ear cups. But with the CB1, you're not going to have those issues. The CB1's padding, it just feels a lot better on your ear as well. It doesn't dig into your ear quite as much, but we're sort of getting into comfort. Lastly, the M40X has the logo on top of the headband, while the CB1 is not branded. It's not branded at all. So there's like nothing on the headphone anywhere that would indicate that it's a Status Audio headphone. But let's get right into comfort. So as I alluded to, the CB1 is a little bit better over the long term. So for longer listening sessions, I would definitely take the CB1 over the 40X. The 40X tends to clamp pretty tight. The pads tend to dig into your ears, and it does get pretty uncomfortable. This is marketed as a reference headphone, but I would not. It's not that I wouldn't ever use it for reference, it's just that I would probably consider other options before I turn to the 40X. And it's for a couple of reasons. One, the comfort level is not that great, and two, it's not really a neutral headphone. Yeah, the CB1's pads are more comfy. They envelop your ears better, and the clamp force is a little bit lighter. So the clamp force on the 40X is kind of tight. Not as tight as an HG600 at first, but it does tend to dig. Both of these headphones actually tend to dig into the top of your head a little bit. I would say the 40X more so. So overall, the 40X is just like way less comfortable than a CB1. I could use a CB1 for gaming over long sessions, whereas I would never consider a 40X for gaming, even strictly from a comfort standpoint. So let's get right into sound and imaging as well as soundstage. Right off the bat, the first thing you're going to notice is that the CB1's soundstage is so much better than the 40X's. In fact, the soundstage on the CB1 is one of the main reasons why it's been a budget king for me for a long time. I mean, I really enjoy the openness and the spaciousness and the width and the airiness of the CB1, and which is interesting considering it's a closed back headphone. I mean, it sounds very open, and I think part of this has to do with the fact that your ears are given more room inside, so your ears aren't as close to the drivers. On the 40X, it's just a lot more boxed in, and you'll notice it doesn't have really good soundstage or imaging like at all. Like, the imaging is pretty good, like you can pinpoint things, but just not as well as typical open back, or even some good closed backs like the K550, K553, as well as the CB1. That's one of the main differences in sound. The CB1 has a kind of a strange sound signature outside of that, whereas the 40X is a little bit more predictable, I guess. As far as treble, that's probably the second main difference here. Is the treble on the 40X is going to be more metallic, more S-y, a little bit more artificial sounding, but it's kind of subtle. Over the majority of tracks, you're going to hear it. There's very rarely going to be a time when you're listening to a song with the 40X and it doesn't sound like, you don't get those issues. I'd say like 95% of the time, it's going to sound kind of brash. Not brash, but kind of just a tad sibilant, a little bit overdone. The CB1's treble is a lot more laid back and relaxed by comparison, but it sometimes comes across as kind of dry. That's like the best word I can describe. Like, it's missing some lushness, it's missing some sense of sparkle, I guess. It just sounds very light and feathery, but don't get me wrong, I mean, it's not really a negative thing per se. You will notice this with certain tracks. It's just maybe ever so slightly dull sometimes, like it's just lacking some energy, whereas the 40X might be just a little bit too much, like it's just a little bit too intense at times. Bass is the third main difference, I would say. The 40X has a little bit more, well, kind of a lot more mid-bass emphasis than the CB1, and again, it's a little bit overdone.
Like your mom's meatloaf.
You hungry? Hey, Ma! Can we get some meatloaf?
You're gonna notice a tad bit of clamminess, bloat, but it's not a deal breaker, I would say, because the 40X is also in my Budget Kings series. But you're gonna notice it. I mean, the 40X is more of a genre-specific headphone, whereas the CB1 works for a wider array of genres. The CB1's bass is a little bit more rolled off and has less mid-bass emphasis. It's more even sounding than the 40X. It's more neutral, which makes it better for mixing, mastering, and reference. Like, I really love this headphone for that, because of the fact that you can hear so much going on due to that soundstage. I mean, it's perfect in the way that it reveals small details, subtle details. Also makes it really good for gaming and movies. So just kind of a all-around good headphone, whereas the 40X is more specialized in that it does better with like bass heavier genres like rap, hip hop, R&B, that type of stuff. Like, I would never listen to a 40X with jazz and classical. Like, I tried it before and it just doesn't work at all. So mid-range, the CB1's mid-range has a lot of interesting, weird, kind of strange peaks and valleys. Both are recessed around 500 hertz. Yeah, the 40X comes back up around 1 to 2K and adds some nice presence there. And the CB1 is just, there's a lot of stuff going on here. So the CB1's also comes back up just before 1K, and then takes another dip around 2, comes back up around 3, takes another dip around 5, and then comes back up around 6. So, I'll put up both Tile's graph and my graph, which are pretty much show the same dips and peaks, like peaks and valleys, but I think his is a little bit easier to read from a bigger picture type of standpoint. Like you could just sit back and see exactly what it's doing. CB1 is a little bit more unpredictable, but at the same time it doesn't sound like that when you're listening to it, because those peaks and valleys aren't like overly accentuated, I guess. It's just a really strange sound signature on paper. But when you're listening to it, it sounds really, really good in my opinion anyway. Amplification, so both are very similar. CB1 comes in at 35 ohm, 98 decibel sensitivity, and the 40X at 32 ohm, 97 decibels. So you're not really going to need an amp with either of these, like if you wanted to use them straight out of your phone. But I always recommend amps and DACs for most headphones because it just improves sound quality across the board, unless you have like the best phone with the best DAC. But most people will benefit from something like an E10K, a Q1, an A3, a Dragonfly Red. Like pretty much anything will work really well with either of these. I think the main takeaway with these headphones is that the M40X sounds a lot more boxed in, whereas the CB1 is more open sounding. Much better for reference, much better clarity on the CB1, more open, has just the right amount of bass for me, and it's the most neutral out of these. So final word, what would I go with? Definitely probably the CB1. It's more enjoyable, and it's more comfortable of a headphone over longer listening sessions. It does well for gaming. In movies, it does well with most genres. It's probably built a little bit flimsier, but it's almost like negligible, the difference. As far as actual rugged quality, it doesn't really matter that much. I mean, the M40X has a little bit of metal, but whatever. Both have a coiled cable and a straight cable. The only thing that's better about the 40X is that it's easier to remove the cable. So I would take the CB1 every day and twice on Sunday. Yeah, that's about it for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this review comparison. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to my growing channel. Let me know what I can do to improve. Let me know what I do well. Let me know what you would like to see next. And with that,
Check 1 2. I hope you enjoyed this review too. It was brought to you by Stu, who, me, the lyrical G. Empirical dreams slide through like dream. PC gaming, letting off steam. Got bars for days like a prison inmate. A misdemeanor's fate, no debate. When I wake up, okay, start my day with a cup and I pray I don't faint. I'm a saint of the Most High God. Of the Most High God.
You know what? I will have some meatloaf. Let's have some meatloaf. You want some? Yes. I knew you'd come. Hey, Mom! The meatloaf! We want it now! The meatloaf! What is she doing? I never know what she's doing back there. Grief is nature's most powerful aphrodisiac. Huh. Look it up. I didn't know that. That's what I've learned.